Good morning. January 25th, 2020. I'm Pastor Rusty, and these are my inspirational thoughts this morning. Going back to our passage where we're looking at the man born blind, and we notice that he was born blind so that God would be glorified. Well, digging a little deeper into the story, it's interesting that the people, Jesus winds up by teaching that he came to give sight to those who couldn't see, and the ones who could see would become blind. We'll get into that in another one. But so we have a process here. The Pharisees were watching all this happen. It was a Sabbath day. It was a healing. Jesus made mud, put it on the guy's eyes. He went and washed in the pool of Siloam, came back, and could see. Now, I don't believe he could see Jesus until after his eyes were opened and people were saying this is a guy that he was born blind and he can't see. And so Pharisees didn't believe a miracle had even taken place. They would not receive the truth that this guy was blind and that now he could see. So it said in verse 18 of John 9 that the Jews did not believe he had been blind and received his sight until they called the parents of the man then who had received his sight. So they call in his parents and they say, "Is this your son? And was he truly born blind?" They said, "Well, we know he's our son and we know he was born blind, but how he got his sight we cannot say. He is of age, ask him." And John goes ahead and asks and states why they said that. The Jews had already agreed. When they say the Jews, they mean the ruling people of the Jews. It wasn't the Jewish nation as a whole, but the ruling people, the Pharisees, the Sadducees, the Sanhedrin, those kind of people. They were against Jesus. And so it said that his parents said this because they were afraid of the Jews, for the Jews had already agreed that anyone who confessed Jesus to be the Messiah would be put out of the synagogue. Therefore his parents said, "He is of age, ask him." So considering this, they held control over people's souls. If you can control somebody's religion, their belief about heaven and hell, the afterlife, and being right with God, whatever that religion is, if somebody has control over it and they can let you in or they can put you out, there's a lot of power, and they were using this power in a negative, evil way. And so the parents were afraid to say, "Yes, this is a wonderful miracle." They were afraid. They didn't want to be put out of the synagogue. And at that point, they didn't really know exactly who Jesus was or what had happened to their son. He'd been born blind. And so there was a fear there. And it's interesting, they would not receive it until the parents said, "That is our son, and yes, he was born blind." So they would receive that truth. And it's interesting, going on down verse 24, it says, "For a second time they called the man who had been blind, and they said to him, 'Give glory to God. We know this man is a sinner.'" Talking about Jesus. He answered, "I do not know whether he is a sinner." I think that's a wonderful answer. "One thing I do know is that I was blind, now I see." That's real simple, isn't it? They would not give God the glory, and they would not recognize the authority of Christ. And they were so determined to be against Jesus that they would not see what God was doing. They were totally blind to it because their minds were made up that God would not send his Messiah. God would not send a prophet. God would not send a son who would do things on a Sabbath day. So they were so, and we know that the Sabbath was made for man, and that it's a glorious thing. And then in the life of the Jews, their people had taken this Sabbath gift and made it a burden. They made it an obstacle to people. God gave man the Sabbath. Sabbath was made for man. A time of rest, a time of recovery, so that we wouldn't work around the clock, and that we would take time to worship and take time to just rest and recover. And it's needed. It was made for our benefit. But they had made it a religious breaking point. They made it a place where they would withdraw fellowship over anybody who did anything on the Sabbath day. And Jesus, obviously, Lord of the Sabbath, healed people. And it didn't take any great effort out of Jesus to make mud and heal this guy. He didn't even have to make the mud. He could have just winked his eye if he wanted, or wiggled his nose, or, he had the power. But he did things in such a way that people would see that God's glory rested on him, and he was sent. And then I think today, how many, and I use the term Bible thumper in a derogatory way, and I shouldn't, because a lot of people love the Bible and love God and actually practice it. But some people love the book more than they do the God of the book. Some people worship the pages more than they do the God that's revealed in the pages. And so I think that's what we're seeing here with these Pharisees, and they refuse to see. They refuse to see And that's what this whole context is about. Spiritual blindness. I'll check in with you on Wednesday, and we'll go a little bit further into what Jesus actually had to say to the Pharisees and how they reacted to it. But I hope today that you're willing to see what God is doing. Don't let the trappings of a philosophy, an ideology, or a theology keep you from seeing what God is doing. And like Henry Blackaby says, find out what God is doing and get involved. It may not make sense to you theologically. You may have heard somebody stand in the pulpit and say, this is not of God. But if it brings God glory, and if it's something that is not against God, then I think sometimes we need to back up and take a look at it and say, what's God doing now, and how can I get involved? I hope your day is blessed. It's a rainy Monday, but that doesn't mean anything to me. This is the day the Lord hath made. Rejoice and be glad in it, and give God the glory for what He's doing, and seek to find Him in the smallest of things. I'm Pastor Rusty. I'll talk to you later.